The Modern Mystery School is an organization that is pretty much worldwide. We're in numerous countries, 50 some odd plus, as I currently film this. And of course, we get questions, questions that come from sort of the matrix mind, the mind of the normal, everyday life, about politics, about movements, about what do you think about this war, and all those things. And we often sit outside of normative thinking. In fact, we try to avoid opinions for one specific reason, that opinions often cause others on the other side of that opinion to be either placed in the category of good, and then the others who are against that opinion as in the category of bad. So opinions really often don't help the world unless it's very open-minded. And we have a teaching, we talk about having mere opinions. In other words, opinions without any critical thinking, any evaluation, any insight, any forethought, any investigation would be a mere opinion. And so we try to avoid those opinions. But a question comes up sometimes, particularly around transgenderism. What does the lineage, what does the modern mystery school think about transgenderism? You know, are you, and one of the, of course, things that unfold, are you pro or against it? Are you for it or against it? And the answer might surprise some of you, because we're both. We are pro-transgenderism and anti-transgenderism, and I think we need to unpack it. I don't know what the transgender movement is in its entirety. I know that it's a movement that talks about the ability to adjust your sexuality, as I understand it, to ignore or set aside biological differences between men and women in the hopes or aspirations to treat everyone equally. And that's as I understand it. So there's a lot more to it than just simply those definitions. Transgenderism, from what I can see in its totality, is full of confusing ideologies running all different directions. There is no sort of monotheistic understanding that I can see in transgenderism. You know, the mystery school, it's very difficult for us to support a movement. We generally don't, because the mystery school is about individuals. Who are you as an individual? And to us, it really doesn't matter what your cultural background is, what your race is, what your sexual preference is, you know, where you come from. It's more about where you are now and where you're going, as opposed to where you came from. We're not really big on group identity because it doesn't mean much to your evolution, unless it means something to you, but then it means something to you as an individual. It doesn't, again, mean anything to the greater whole. My feelings about myself do not dictate how other people are going to feel about me, and that's true in every way. So when I look at the transgender movement, it's very difficult for me to give an overall assessment of a movement when there is so much ambiguity and confusion within the movement itself. I don't even know who actually represents such a movement. It's kind of like saying I'm a white guy and I say, like, I now represent all white people. Would that be true? No, categorically false. I'm a male, so now I represent, everything I say now represents what all men say. No, no one would take that as true. But in all movements, including what I can see from transgenderism, there are certain people who are the advocates and the activists. And the problem with an activist in any movement is that they will end up being closed-minded. And once you're closed-minded, you can easily slide into fanaticism. Once you're into fanaticism, you can no longer be trusted to do what's best for people, because you're a fanatic and you're going to be pushing a specific agenda, and you can't be trusted that there is any clarity in that, because the fanaticism blinds you to possible mistakes within the equation, possible things that need to be changed, adaptation that needs to take place. So when we look at transgenderism, we can't say that we're for or against transgenderism in its totality, because I don't know. And I don't think anyone in the community or in the movement of transgenderism can tell me what the totality of it is. You know, there may be some shared understandings, but they appear, from what I can see from the outside, to be limited. And then from these shared understandings, the next step is everyone runs a different direction and has a different application of what that shared understanding is. So, for example, if in transgenderism, some of the activists claim that the traditional family unit is evil. If that is what you say transgenderism is, then clearly, no, we would not support transgenderism. We don't place anyone in the category of evil by the definition they've chosen to live their life a certain way. If you say transgenderism is about the fact that men and women should be given equal opportunity in everything they do based on merit and accountability and responsibility towards that opportunity, if that's transgenderism, then 100% we support transgenderism. If you say that transgenderism is that biological males should be allowed to go into women's sports, usually in sports they've competed as a biological male, and then take on women as a biological male, then the answer would be no, we don't support transgenderism. That is the destruction of the divine feminine. That is the destruction of women and what they've worked for. There's a lot of aspects to this. And so I think most people, for those in the transgender community, however you define yourself in the transgender community, which is yet another thing. I don't really even understand what the buy-in on that community is. What's the card you have to carry to say I'm part of the transgender community? I know it's associated with the LGBT community, but the L, G, and the B appear to be in alignment with their physical selves and just expressing a sexual preference. The transgender seems to be a mix-up of physicality and sexuality all bundled together. So, you know, it's hard to address you support something when there's that much ambiguity that's gone into it, or is sitting within it. If you were to say that transgenderism is about men and women having the right to express themselves for their own personal life choices and desires, and there should be no traditional normative application of what a woman or man is placed upon you. Therefore, if you're a man and it's traditionally thought of that, you know, you're doing something that a woman would do, that you shouldn't be judged for that, well, then we're pro-transgenderism. I agree with you. You have the right to express yourself, dress any way you want, attire yourself any way. But if you're telling me that the only way to accept you as a human being in any aspect, whether transgenderism or not, is to ignore reality, then I'm sorry, we're not with transgenderism. Because the ignoring of reality means you cannot make reality better. And right away, we have an obstacle we can't get around. The only way you improve reality is to accept reality. If transgenderism is about the fact that the only way that someone from that community can be accepted is to hate or disavow other communities, then no. Just like racism, the answer would be no. Or bigotry, the answer is no. These are not things that we would openly stand with. We will accept you and try and help you should you want it. But generally, people who are that fanatical about a belief system, they don't want to learn anything. They're closed-minded. And so therefore, they just deem themselves as 100% right and impossible to teach or express or be exposed to any new information. And then they won't move. And then you basically have fanaticism. And so there's an aspect of transgenderism within the community where a number of representatives or people that would appear on the news or social media who say they speak for the community are fanatical. So one of the things, if I were to give advice to the transgender community, as I understand it to be, and I'm open to understand that there are things maybe I don't understand about it, of course, would be that you are not going to make your point to society by making enemies. Now, there's a really simple rule. If you are a minority group in anything in society, you do not get ahead by placing yourself in opposition to the majority. That will create enemies. What the fruits of transgenderism, as far as I can see, the results has been to create more enemies that weren't necessarily, by any means, going to be the enemies of the transgender community. One of the things that I think, if you were to say, what could the transgender community do to be heard better by the regular person in society, by an average person in society, someone just living their life, and you could even say a traditional person, a person who's living a traditional lifestyle. What could the transgender community do to be heard better? One thing would be, quite clearly, to be in alignment with the fact that our biology in sports makes a massive difference. And there's an aspect of the community. There are those in the community that I can see who understand that and agree, yes, biological men should not be competing against women. Just because they self-identify as women does not give them the right to go in and annihilate women's world records, annihilate what women have fought so hard for, and just basically destroy women's sports. And there are some in the community that feel that way. And you're like, okay, good, great. What else? What from here now, what can we do to help you? But for those that are against that and feel like, no, that biology doesn't matter, you're losing people. And that you're ignoring reality. I'm a longtime martial artist, and I boxed and kickboxed and jiu-jitsu and many things. And in those sports, we have weight categories. So if someone's a heavyweight boxer and they're 240 pounds, they don't get to turn around and say, if I'm not, and I'm sorry to say this, but unfortunately this seems to be the story with men wanting to compete in women's sports. They don't do very well in the men's sport. So it's like the heavyweight boxer who just doesn't cut the mustard to be a world-class heavyweight boxer. So then he would self-identify to be a featherweight and then go beat up a guy a third of his size and say, I'm now the featherweight champion of the world. Nobody would think that's fair or right. We have weight categories because we even recognize within just male biology, there is enough significant difference that you have to separate people. So, that would be one thing that I would say. If you want, I think the term is allies, you want more allies, then there are certain things that need to be addressed within the community, certain common sense things that need to be looked at. One of them is this sort of concept that men and women are identical, and they're not. Our biological differences are significant, so significant that objectively, whether dead or alive, you can tell the difference between a man and a woman. Even in people who have been buried in the ground for thousands of years can be exhumed, and you can identify the difference. The difference goes down to the core of who we are. That doesn't mean that you are required to apply yourself to some sort of narrative as a man or a woman about how you're going to behave. No, that's not what that means. It just means there is a difference. It means there's a difference in capability. There's a difference in where we are more capable of something and less capable of something. And I think from what I can glean within the transgender community, this is one of the biggest parts that creates opposition. When I travel all over the world, except for the very fanatical, usually extreme religious people, I don't see anyone against transgender people. What I do see is people who want certain things looked at and addressed and talked about that the community just does not seem to want to address. And if you choose not to address issues like that, you're not really going to get very far. But let's say you do address them. Let's say you address these issues, and in every case you identify that the person asking the question is categorically wrong in their assumptions. Well, now we have a problem because we run into two opposing beliefs. And one belief is going to have to eventually displace the other when those beliefs are about how you shape society at its core level. I do find it funny that how many people, funny in the sense of being odd, that many people in the trans community find offense by being questioned. And to me, it's a bit odd that it would appear that the trans community is challenging the basis of society. Like this goes beyond politics. This goes beyond culture or race. You're challenging biological functionality. and you're challenging the roles that have emerged from certain biological functionality. And that even if you're right, that you wouldn't understand the hesitation or the caution to which society would want to approach you, since you are talking about changing a foundation that has carried us to this point in time. That's not to say the foundation shouldn't change. Didn't say that. But, you know, you of course have to expect that if you come in and start trying to pull apart the foundations of a society, that resistance will happen. And if you actually want to make that change, if you feel that change is significant, it's appropriate, it will benefit people, and I hope it's more than just benefiting an individual, because that would lead to very many ills in society, but benefiting the whole, then you got to make your case rationally. You got to make your case reasonably. You got to make your case to the average person and explain to them in the most polite, kind way what you're trying to do and why. And then you also have to do something else and give them time. And I don't see that in the transgender community. I see them making numerous mistakes that are basically putting them in opposition to what most people are feeling. And then you get the people that want to support the transgender community that are bound up by these lack of understandings, because there is so many ambiguities and so many things undefined about it. You know, you say, well, can you support me? But what am I supporting? And so for the modern mystery school, we can't say that we support any movement. You know, and I would include in that things like feminism, things like BLM. You name the movement. What is this movement about? Movements are people. They're individuals. We support people. We support individuals. We support people trying to improve their lives. But we support people trying to improve their lives in such a way that you are not needing to damage other people's lives to do that. You are not needing to cast other people out. You are not needing to prejudge or harm others, even in your thoughts, to achieve what you want. It's quite anti-Hermetic to throw in with any movement 100% when that movement is individuals, and individuals come in many shades of positive and negative. So in terms of the mystery school, we don't deal with movements. We deal with people. We deal with an individual. We deal with your merit. We deal with your beliefs, your personal beliefs. We deal with what you're trying to do. And most importantly, we deal with how to heal you, which is to teach you how to heal yourself more than anything else, so that you can live your best life. And movements, can they help that? Possibly. But usually, because of the fanaticism of the activism of a movement, it disallows information that an individual may need to improve their life. It's like you're not allowed to ask that question. It's kind of like in certain religions when you're not allowed to ask a question about, well, why does God allow evil to exist if God is all good? You're not allowed to ask that. There's a bunch of religions that will tell you that's wrong and you're a bad person. That's just as fanatical as me turning around and asking perhaps a transgender person, do you not think that a male biology and a female biology are different at its core? That would be like, and if I'm not allowed to ask that, then you're telling me I'm not allowed to think it. And if I'm not allowed to think it, then you're just wanting to apply authority in my life. And that should tell you something. If the only way to get your argument across is by authoritarianism, you will comply, or else I will inflict harm upon your life. Your argument, your offering that you have a better way is not being identified as a better way. It's being identified as something wrong. Now, do we need to be pushed sometimes? Yes. But for us in the mystery school, humanity, for the most part, when given time to understand what is better, we generally take on the better. That's why you talk about these old histories and how bad they were. Yes, because they're histories. There is bad things happening today for those who didn't learn from those histories. But for those who study those histories, we tend to say, well, you know what? Slavery doesn't serve humanity. Let's get rid of that. You know, war isn't great for human beings. Let's not do that. And those that haven't learned that lesson, They still choose a lot of those options. So, when you look at an offering, if it is truly better for society, if it's truly better for an individual human being, because society is individual human beings and what they think. If it's better for those individual human beings, then make your case. Make your case for why it's better. Make the case of, let me explain how this is going to improve the state of humanity. Right now, I see the transgender community, because of their own internal ambiguity, it has left others who wish to manipulate that movement for nefarious means come in. And, for example, no, if transgenderism is that I have to accept that pedophiles are okay, absolutely 1000% no. And so that is a no-go zone. Children need to be protected. Children are the ones we need to protect the most. Children are the ones we need to care for the most. And children are the ones we need to be the most cautious of. And so there's an aspect within that part of the community that you say, can you address that for us? Can you openly address that? And then it's going to be much easier to support all the other stuff. Most movements, and I think transgenderism is kind of the same, but again, open to be corrected. Most movements come in a package. And that package is you accept 100% of the package, or you're out. You're one of the bad people. Even if there's 5 things you agree with and 5 things you disagree with, you have to accept all of it as the correct thing. It's kind of classically daft, considering the core of how much transgenderism is challenging society, that anyone who is an activist in that community would say, you must accept every single thing we tell you as correct, no matter what. Like, everything you say that is in disagreement is wrong, it's evil, it's phobic, it's negative. Okay, well then you're going to make a whole lot of enemies that you didn't have to have as enemies, who could have been your what I believe they call them allies. Could have been your allies. That is true of all movements. It's true of all movements. So if you're a transgender community and we want to help heal people, and you really want to help people who have this pain and the pain of someone living in a body they don't like, you don't have to be transgender to understand that, folks. There's lots of people who live in bodies they don't like, and it's not about their sex. It's so many other things. So people can understand that pain. And I can definitely empathize with the pain of a human being who feels trapped inside their own physical body. My God, that must be just god-awful. So the answer would be, for us from the mystery school, how can I help you? But if how I can help you is to not question what your assertions of your beliefs that is causing this pain, I can't help you. You don't want help, you want compliance. That's not help. Help oftentimes is saying, have you thought that you might be wrong? That is often help. It's not only affirming something as being helpful. There is so many ways that we can help people, but from the mystery school's perspective, we have to start with what it is you're believing about yourself. And if those beliefs are detrimental to you, then let's look at your beliefs first. For example, one of the things you could address in the transgender community is, before you change your body, have you looked at the health of your mind? So the concept is, my mind's healthy, my body's unhealthy. Therefore, my body changes, my mind will be in alignment with my body. Okay, that might be true. Fair enough. But there's also the other aspect that maybe your mind isn't healthy and your body is. And there's something that you don't accept about yourself that if you could shift into acceptance, you would find so much more joy. That is also true. We have many members who identify themselves as part of the LGBTQ plus community in the mystery school, and some of them are trans. And I think they would pretty much all tell you that we have brought to them great healing and great help. Not by changing them into anything, but just by having them examine themselves more closely with more of an open concept of what is possible for them to do and to live out their lives. When it comes to the transgender community, I don't know how to say we back it because I don't know what it is. I can back a human being. I can back a person. I can help a person. When it comes to a movement, can't really do that as the mystery school because I don't know, a movement is not an individual. It's individuals that we deal with. It's individuals that we help. And it's not so much movements that we're into for anybody. We deal with everyone, but we deal with everyone on their own merit.